venture behind the lens, and step across the boundaries of conventional narratives. Today, we invite you to bear witness to the powerful, transformative moments that redefined everything we thought we knew.
Afternoon. Got a call about two people sitting here too long, making guests uncomfortable.
We're just having dinner, officer. We haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, well, this isn't really the place for your type to linger. Maybe wrap it up.
Your type? What do you mean by your type,
You know
officer?
exactly what I meant.
We're celebrating our anniversary.
Bodycam captures two couples seated near the window section of an upscale downtown restaurant. Anniversary candles lit between them. Wine glasses half full. Soft jazz playing low through ceiling speakers. It's calm, elegant, normal. Until the restaurant's front doors swing open, and uniformed police step inside. The bodycam angle shifts slightly with each step the officer takes across the polished floor. Guests glance up. Servers slow mid-stride. Because police presence in a place like this always breaks atmosphere. And the camera records exactly where his eyes go first. Not to the host stand. Not to management. Straight to one table. A black couple seated by the window. Early 30s. Dressed formal. Dinner plates in front of them. Barely touched. A folded anniversary card sits beside the candle centerpiece. The woman is smiling softly at something the man just said. He's holding her hand across the table. Quiet. Private. Celebratory. Until the officer stops beside them. Bodycam tilts downward slightly, framing them seated. His hand rests near his duty belt. Authority posture before conversation even starts. Then he speaks. Flat tone. No greeting. No introduction. Afternoon, folks. We got a call about some people hanging around too long, making guests uncomfortable. The couple pause mid-conversation. Confusion replaces warmth instantly. The man looks up first. Calm. Respectful. We're just eating our lunch, officer. We haven't done anything wrong. The officer shifts his stance slightly. Camera shaking subtly with the movement. His eyes scan their table slowly. Plates. Glasses. Candle. Card. Then back to them. Yeah, well, he says. This isn't really the place for your type to linger. Silence lands hard. The woman's hand slowly lowers from the wine glass. The man's expression tightens. Not anger yet. Just awareness. Maybe wrap it up and head out. All right, the officer adds. Nearby diners glance over. Because the phrase, your type doesn't hide inside quiet rooms. Before we go any further, comment where you're watching from. Let's see how far this documentary travels. The man sits back slightly in his chair. Still calm. Still controlled. But now fully alert to what's happening. Sir, he says evenly, we just ordered entrees. We're celebrating our anniversary. We're not hanging around. We're dining. The officer tilts his head faintly. Like the explanation doesn't matter. We've had complaints, he replies. From who? The woman asks quietly. He gestures vaguely around the restaurant. Guests. She glances around. No one is looking directly at them. Most diners have returned to their meals. A few are watching subtly. But no one appears disturbed. We've been here less than 40 minutes, she says. The officer shrugs. Still got a call. The man folds his napkin slowly on the table. Measured movements. Controlled breathing. Respectfully, officer. A call doesn't mean we've done anything wrong. The officer shifts his weight again. Bodycam angle dips slightly as he leans closer to their table. Lower voice now. Sharper. Look, I'm trying to handle this politely. We are too, the man replies. Then let's not make it complicated, the officer says. His eyes move across the dining room again. Then back to them. This place has a certain atmosphere to maintain. There it is again. Not policy language. Social language. The woman speaks this time, calm but firmer. We're part of that atmosphere. We're paying customers. The officer exhales through his nose. Yeah, he says slowly. But some folks feel uncomfortable. Because we're eating? She asks. He doesn't answer directly. Instead, he says, You've been sitting here a while without much activity. The man gestures to their plates. We're waiting on our entrees. Or lingering, the officer replies. Silence again. But now tension is visible. because diners nearby are definitely listening. A server approaches cautiously from behind the officer. "Is there an issue here?" she asks. The officer doesn't turn fully toward her. "We're handling it." She hesitates. "They've been wonderful guests," she says carefully. "No disturbance at all." The officer finally glances back at her. "Ma'am, you can step away. This is police business." She pauses, then nods reluctantly and steps back. But she doesn't go far, because even staff can feel when something is off. The officer returns his focus to the couple. "Like I said," he continues, "maybe it's best if you finish up and move along." The man shakes his head slightly. "We're not being asked to leave because of time." The officer's jaw tightens faintly. "Excuse me?" "We're being asked to leave because you think we don't belong here," the man says calmly. The woman places her hand lightly on his arm. Grounding. Supportive. The officer's tone hardens. "You're putting words in my mouth." "Then clarify yours," the man replies. Silence stretches, because now diners are openly watching. Wine glasses pause midair, forks hovering above plates. The officer leans closer again. Voice low, but audible on Bodycam audio. "Let me be direct," he says. "This isn't the kind of restaurant where people like you usually spend 3 hours at a table." The woman's eyes widen slightly. "We haven't even been here an hour," she says. "But the damage is already done. Because the phrase, 'people like you,' lands heavier than policy ever could." The man sits forward now, still composed, but voice firmer. "Officer, we're celebrating our anniversary. We reserved this table weeks ago." The officer straightens. "Reservation under what name?" "Daniel Carter," the man replies. The officer stares at him, longer than necessary, then glances at the anniversary card on the table. Still unopened. Still private. "Look," the officer says. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to resolve complaints." "There is no complaint," the man replies. "You keep saying that like you were the one who called it in," the officer snaps back. The woman exhales slowly. "This is humiliating," she says quietly. The officer shrugs faintly. "Wouldn't be if you just cooperated." "With what?" she asks. "Leaving." "We're not leaving," the man says calmly. Silence drops again, because refusal shifts the encounter. The officer's posture changes subtly, less conversational, more authoritative. His hand rests closer to his belt now, not aggressive, but suggestive of escalation if needed. "You're refusing a lawful order," he asks. "What law are we breaking?" The man replies. No answer, just a stare, because there isn't one. A nearby diner whispers to another table. Phones begin lifting subtly. Not obvious yet, but recording has started. The Bodycam captures the reflections of screens in the restaurant windows, because moments like this never stay private anymore. The officer speaks again, tone colder now. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be." "No," the man replies evenly. "You are." Silence. Jazz music still playing faintly overhead. Glasses clinking somewhere across the room. But at this table, everything is frozen. Because what started as dinner has turned into a public confrontation driven by assumption rather than action. And the Bodycam keeps recording every second. The unsolicited approach. The racial language. The attempt to force removal without cause. The humiliation layered onto celebration. The officer still believes he's in control of the situation. Still believes he's resolving a complaint. Still believes this is routine. But what he doesn't know yet is that the very table he's trying to clear isn't just reserved. It's owned. Because the man he's pressuring to leave his anniversary dinner is one of the restaurant's co-owners. And the staff watching nervously from across the dining floor already know it. They're just waiting to see how far the officer pushes it before management steps in. Because once that reveal happens, this won't be about a complaint anymore. It will be about authority, misused, bias documented, and consequences that begin the second this footage leaves the Bodycam server. Bodycam continues recording without interruption. No cuts, no edits, just raw documentation of escalation building in real time. The officer remains standing over the couple's table. Posture rigid, authority forward, patience thinning. And the longer they don't comply, the more personal his tone becomes. He studies Daniel again. Suit tailored. Watch expensive. Posture confident even while seated. It doesn't match the narrative he had already built in his head. And that mismatch irritates him. "You're really going to sit here and argue instead of just leaving?" he asks. Daniel keeps his voice level. "I'm going to sit here and finish dinner with my wife." "Yes." The officer scoffs under his breath. Bodycam dips as his shoulders shift. Unbelievable. He glances around the dining room again, scanning faces, looking for validation that isn't there, because no one looks threatened. No one looks uncomfortable. If anything, they look uncomfortable watching him. He turns back to the table. "You know, most people in your position would have just left by now." Daniel tilts his head slightly. "My position?" "Yeah," the officer says, instead of trying to make some kind of point. "We're not making a point," Daniel replies. "We're eating." The woman squeezes his hand lightly under the table. Silent reassurance. But the officer notices the gesture and misreads it completely. "See that?" he says. "Now you're making her uncomfortable too." She looks up at him immediately. "I'm uncomfortable because of you, officer." He smirks faintly. "Right." Then his voice lowers again. Sharper, more direct. "Let me save you some embarrassment." Silence. "Places like this run on the reputation," he continues. "Regular clientele, certain expectations." Daniel watches him steadily. And sometimes management would rather avoid situations. The word hangs loaded. Undefined. But obvious. The woman speaks again. Voice firmer now. "What situation are we creating by eating dinner we paid for?" The officer shrugs. "You're drawing attention." "You drew the attention," Daniel replies calmly. That lands. Because it's true. And truth irritates authority when authority wants compliance. The officer's stance tightens. Bodycam angle shifts closer as he steps nearer to the table edge. "You know what the call actually said?" he asks. Daniel doesn't answer. The officer continues anyway. "They said there were two individuals who didn't look like they belonged, occupying a premium window table for hours." The woman's brows knit. "That's a lie." He shrugs again. Perception matters. Daniel leans back slowly in his chair. Measured. Controlled. So someone called police because black people were dining near a window. The officer's jaw tightens. "You're twisting it." "No," Daniel replies. "I'm clarifying it." A few diners nearby exchange glances. Phones rise higher now. Not subtle anymore. Because tone has crossed from coded to documented. The officer notices the phones. And instead of de-escalating, he doubles down. "Go ahead and record," he says loudly. "Won't change the fact that you're being asked to leave." Daniel's voice remains even. "We're being told to leave, not asked." The officer points toward the exit. "Same result if you don't cooperate." The woman exhales slowly. "You're threatening us over dinner." "I'm enforcing a complaint," he replies. "Based on race," Daniel says flatly. The officer laughs once. Short. Dismissive. "Everything's about race with you people." Silence slams the table again. Because that phrase doesn't blur on audio. It stamps. Permanent. A server across the room freezes mid-step. Another guest audibly whispers, "Wow." But the officer keeps going. "If you spent less time playing victim and more time respecting establishments, situations like this wouldn't happen." Daniel studies him carefully now. Not angry. Observing. Documenting mentally the same way the Bodycam is digitally. "We made a reservation," he says calmly. "We checked in, we ordered, we paid a deposit for this table." The officer tilts his head. "Says who?" Daniel gestures subtly toward the host stand. "Your problem isn't with our reservation. It's with us sitting in it." The officer leans closer again, voice dropping low, but still caught clearly on Bodycam audio. "You know what my problem is?" Daniel doesn't respond. The officer answers himself. My problem is people who think dressing nice gives them access to spaces they didn't earn. The woman's eyes widen slightly. Excuse me? You heard me. Daniel's posture shifts for the first time. Not aggressive, but upright. Grounded. You're out of line. The officer straightens immediately. No. You're out of place. Gasps ripple quietly across nearby tables. Because now the racism isn't implied. It's declared. And recorded. Daniel glances around the dining room slowly, taking in the witnesses. The staff frozen in uncertainty. Then he looks back at the officer. Still calm. Still controlled. Officer, I'm going to say this once. The officer folds his arms. Go ahead. We are not leaving. Silence again. He nods faintly to himself, like he expected that answer. Then he reaches for his radio. Bodycam angle tilts as his arm lifts. Dispatch. I've got 2 uncooperative individuals refusing to comply with removal request. The woman's voice cuts in immediately. Removal request for what? He ignores her, still speaking into the radio. Possible trespass situation. That word lands heavier than all the others. Trespass. In a restaurant they legally reserved. Daniel's eyes narrow slightly. You're escalating this without cause. The officer lowers the radio. You escalated it when you refused to leave. We refuse discrimination, Daniel corrects. The officer smirks again. Call it whatever helps you sleep. Across the restaurant, management staff begin gathering near the back corridor. Whispering. Watching. Because the body cam isn't the only camera recording anymore. Internal security feeds are live, and every word being said is echoing upstairs in real time. But the officer doesn't know that yet. He just sees a couple who won't comply, and ego refuses retreat. You know what happens next? He asks. Daniel doesn't answer. Backup arrives. We escort you out. Simple. The woman shakes her head slowly. This is unbelievable. No, the officer replies. What's unbelievable is the entitlement. Daniel's voice lowers now. Calm, but firm. You think we don't belong here? The officer shrugs again. I think people should stay in environments that fit them. There it is again. Blunt, unfiltered, and permanently logged on Bodycam storage. The tension in the restaurant has fully shifted now. Jazz still plays. Glasses still clink. But no one is eating. Because the anniversary table has become the center of gravity for the entire room. And the officer still believes he holds authority here. Still believes he's enforcing order. Still believes the couple will fold before backup arrives. But what he doesn't realize is that management isn't preparing to remove the couple. They're preparing to confront him. Because internal records already confirmed something critical minutes ago. Daniel Carter isn't just a guest. He's listed on the ownership license. Co-founder, equity partner, name printed on the very business registration framed in the lobby entrance, which means the officer standing over him is threatening to trespass the man from property he legally owns. And once that revelation hits the body cam audio, this confrontation won't just escalate. It will flip completely, because pressure is still rising. Misunderstandings are no longer misunderstandings. They're documented bias. And the next voice that enters this conversation won't belong to law enforcement. It will belong to ownership. The officer's radio call for backup still hangs in the air when movement starts behind him. Not fast. Not chaotic. Controlled. Professional. From the back corridor leading toward the kitchen, 3 individuals step onto the dining floor. A floor manager, the restaurant's general manager, and a suited executive holding a tablet. Staff across the room subtly straightens as they approach, because leadership presence inside the dining area never happens casually. The officer hears the footsteps and turns slightly. Bodycam angle pivots with him. The general manager speaks first. Calm but firm. Officer, is there a problem here? He gestures casually toward Daniel and his wife. Yeah, we received complaints about them lingering and making guests uncomfortable. They're refusing to leave. Silence follows that statement, but not from uncertainty, from restraint, because the staff standing behind the officer already know what to do. He doesn't. The suited executive glances down at the tablet briefly, then back at Daniel. Recognition. Immediate. He steps forward. "Mr. Carter," he says respectfully. "Apologies for the interruption." The officer's head turns sharply. Bodycam catches the shift. "Wait, you know him?" he asks. The executive looks at him evenly. "Yes." Pause. Then calmly. "He's one of the owners." Silence detonates across the dining room. Glasses freeze midair. Forks stop moving. Even the jazz music suddenly feels too loud in the background. The officer blinks once, like the sentence didn't register. "Owner?" he repeats. The general manager nods. "Co-founder. Equity partner. His name is on the business license." Bodycam dips slightly as the officer looks back at Daniel. Really looks this time. Suit? Watch. Composure. Confidence. Everything he dismissed earlier now it reframes itself instantly. Daniel doesn't speak right away. He just holds eye contact. Calm. Steady. In control. The officer clears his throat slightly. "Well, we still had a complaint." The executive responds immediately. "No guest filed a complaint." That lands heavier, because it removes his last procedural cover. The floor manager adds quietly. "The call came from an anonymous outside number. We're reviewing it now." The officer's posture shifts. Less dominant. More defensive. He gestures vaguely. "They were occupying a premium table for hours." "They've been here 43 minutes, the manager cuts in. Tablet screen still lit. Timestamp visible. Verified. Silence wraps tighter now, because every justification he offered is dissolving one by one. Daniel finally speaks. Voice calm. Measured. "Officer, you tried to remove me from a restaurant I co-own." No anger, no raised tone. Just fact. The officer exhales slowly. "Well, that information wasn't available to me." Daniel tilts his head slightly. "It shouldn't have mattered." That lands harder than anything else said so far, because ownership isn't the issue. Bias is. The executive steps forward another half pace. Professional, but firm. Bodycam footage will need to be preserved for corporate and legal review. The officer's jaw tightens faintly, because now he understands. This isn't ending inside the restaurant. Daniel continues calmly. "You approached us without cause." Pause. "You used racial language." Another pause. "You attempted unlawful removal." The officer doesn't interrupt, because there's nothing to argue. The audio recorded it all. Around them, diners begin whispering again. Phones still raised, because now they're witnessing the reversal. Authority dissolving in real time. The officer finally nods stiffly. "Well, if there's no complaint, you're free to continue your meal." Daniel holds his gaze a second longer, then replies quietly, "We always were." Silence again. The officer steps back. Containment posture gone. Dominance gone. Presence reduced to procedure. Management remains beside the table. A protective buffer now. And the body cam captures the final visual contrast perfectly. The officer standing alone. The couple seated. Still dignified. Still composed. Still exactly where they belonged their entire time. Because what began as an attempted removal has just exposed documented bias on record. And the footage recording on his own chest has become the evidence that will follow him long after tonight ends. If you're enjoying this documentary so far, like and subscribe. Because what comes next isn't just accountability, it's consequences that end careers. Bodycam continues recording even after the confrontation ends. Because cameras don't stop when tension fades. They keep documenting what happens after authority is challenged. After ego collapses. After reality sets in. The officer steps back from the table fully now. Posture no longer dominant. No longer investigative. Just procedural. His radio remains silent on his shoulder. Because backup units were already advised to stand down the moment management confirmed ownership. Across the dining room, atmosphere slowly begins to reset. Conversations resume in hushed tones. Servers start moving again, though more carefully now, because everyone understands they just witnessed something serious. Not loud, but significant. The general manager remains beside Daniel and his wife. Professional, respectful, protective. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, we sincerely apologize for this disruption, he says. Daniel nods once, calm as before, but firmer now. This wasn't a disruption, he replies quietly. It was discrimination. The manager doesn't argue, because Bodycam audio already confirmed it. The suited executive adds, corporate legal has already requested preservation of all footage. Internal cameras and law enforcement Bodycam. The officer hears that clearly. Bodycam captures the slight shift in his breathing, because now consequences feel real, not hypothetical. Real. Daniel speaks again. Still seated. Still composed. You approached us without cause. Pause. You profiled us publicly. Another pause. You attempted to remove us from property we own. The officer nods stiffly. No defense offered, because none would hold. Management turns toward him fully now. Professional tone, but cold. Officer, your badge number and department will be included in the incident report. He nods again. Short. Tight. Understood. But the body cam records the tension in his jaw. Because reports mean review. Review means scrutiny. Scrutiny means discipline. Within 24 hours, the footage is formally logged. Not just the officer's body cam. Restaurant surveillance, dining floor audio. Host stand records, reservation logs, anonymous call trace. All of it compiled into one incident file. Because when civil liability is possible, documentation becomes armor. Internal Affairs opens an inquiry within 3 days. Because the language captured on Bodycam crosses departmental conduct policy immediately. Key violations listed. Racially biased language. Abuse of authority. Attempted unlawful removal. Escalation without cause. Conduct unbecoming of an officer. The anonymous complaint call is traced. Unfounded. No guest corroboration. No disturbance report. Which removes the officer's last justification entirely. 30 days later, disciplinary findings conclude. The ruling is direct. Sustained misconduct. Not procedural error. Bias-driven conduct. Penalty outcome. Immediate suspension without pay. Mandatory civil rights. Retraining. Psychological fitness review. Probationary reinstatement pending final board approval. But it doesn't stop there. Because Bodycam footage doesn't stay internal anymore. Once filed in a civil rights complaint, it becomes discoverable evidence. Daniel files formally. Not emotionally. Professionally. On behalf of both himself and the business. Claims include wrongful targeting, civil rights violation, public defamation, interference with business operations, emotional distress inflicted on patrons. Because the humiliation wasn't private. It happened in front of a full dining room. On their anniversary. The settlement process moves quickly. Because video evidence removes ambiguity. No courtroom theatrics needed. No witness credibility debates. Just footage. Audio. Facts. Final civil resolution. 6-figure settlement paid jointly by the department and municipal liability insurer. Mandatory departmental policy revision issued. Bias response protocol updated. Bodycam review standards tightened. Because lawsuits don't just cost money. They force reform. Back inside the restaurant. Life moves forward. Reservations stay booked. Dining room stays full. But policy changes quietly follow the incident. Direct management intervention required before police removals of guests. Anonymous complaints require staff verification first. Ownership presence alerts added to reservation systems. Because leadership learned something critical. Authority unchecked creates liability. And liability reshapes policy faster than complaints ever could. 6 months later, Daniel and his wife returned to the same window table. Same night of the year. Same anniversary. Candles lit again. Wine poured again. But atmosphere feels different. Not tense. Protected. Because staff recognize them instantly now. Not just as owners, but as the couple who forced accountability. A server pauses beside the table before leaving entrees. "Happy anniversary again, Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she says warmly. Daniel smiles faintly. "Thank you." No police presence interrupts the night this time. No confrontation. No humiliation. Just dinner, the way it should have been from the beginning. Bodycam footage from that night is archived permanently. Training material now, used in departmental bias education modules. Because recorded misconduct becomes teaching evidence. Not theory, reality. What it captured wasn't just one officer's mistake. It captured assumption, language, power misused in a space where it wasn't warranted. What began as an attempted removal ended with an officer disciplined, a department audited, policies rewritten, a civil settlement paid, and a documented reminder that authority without accountability collapses under evidence, because the officer believed he was enforcing order. But what he really enforced was the end of his own credibility. And the body cam on his chest recorded the entire lesson without missing a second. The end.
Documents and official records are the absolute foundation of our history, framing the stories that shape our reality. Every story is a relentless pursuit of genuine truth. Thank you for dedicating your valuable time to investigate these truths with us.